instead of creating new graphics, bringing in new artwork, and showing questionable techniques for bringing in artwork from websites, those type of things, we'll just use the actual graphics on screen now that you can see inside of Corel. And we'll be using the text as represented in the different areas to generate our proposal also. As you can see in the lower right, and I'll zoom in. I hope I don't make anyone a little nauseated by zooming in and out. I do that quite a bit. Zooming in here to the lower right of the screen, these are all the classes that I'll be teaching. Feel free to sign up, register for as many as you like. We're happy to share our knowledge. We're happy to share our client possibilities through Planby Marketing also. And it's very easy to find these classes straight on the Wilcom website under Get Help, Learning, and Online Training. And that's where we are now. There's quite a few other trainers that are very, very talented in other avenues of digitizing, specifics to Deco Studio, and some of the more basic classes as well. Again, the ones listed, quoted advanced or intermediate Corel classes, I'll be teaching myself. Proposals must include, and we'll dive right into the topic now. Proposals must include some very specific information. They can include much more than this, but in order for it to be a relevant proposal or a graphic option or a option of sale, if you will, to your customers, you must have several things. You must have your name, obviously, your logo, very, very important, your contacts information. Even when you're generating a proposal to a whole group of people, a whole large gamut of softball people, you should say specifically what it is. If it's just a sports proposal, that's very rare. The type of sport, the region, the state, the zip code, the school specifically, or very often we can get as specific as a specific mascot and group. So not just the softball team, but the softball team championship of 2013. Very important to define that customer. The graphic elements is, well, if in my example as a softball team, there would be a mascot involved, there would be a logo involved. The graphic element might be a client's graphic that they sent to you via email that you copy and paste off their website. The products are what you're proposing to them. They say, hey Clay, we want to buy a bunch of t-shirts. You show them their cool graphic or their logo on t-shirts. Very often you're going to show them an additional product as well. Don't limit yourself to what the client is asking for. If it's a winter event and you're showing graphics on hoodies, then offer them coffee mugs, something warm, a beverage. That one more sale opportunity is very important in proposal generation too. We're all business owners. We all are in sales to some degree or another. Representing ourselves as salesmen is not a bad thing. Yes, being salesmen takes a little bit of a bad taste in all of our mouths, but people come to us to buy things. So we should be able to offer them not just the things specifically, but that one more sale opportunity also, in that, hey, you need hoodies, how about a coffee mug? You need headbands, well, what about water bottles? And there's many, many opportunities that we all offer. And even if we're not specifically promotional products distributors ourselves, as an embroiderer, I can certainly sew on apparel and caps, but I'm sure there's either someone down the street that can provide that water bottle. If not, I'm sure I can find a way to get it for the customer if they want it, because we all know there's margins and profit to be made. And there's plenty of middlemen out there, including companies like myself that can certainly provide those hard-to-find products. Pricing on the promotion is very important also. Even if you're dealing with a wide gamut of a proposal generation for a wide gamut of possible prospects and customers, give them a number. We all need to be able to wrap our brains around a conceptual number. T-shirts start at $7. You don't necessarily have to say $6.49, specifically for 2-color prints, and caps start at $12 with under 8,000 stitches, and yes, it's very good to get specific with the pricing when the client is specific, but when you go for a proposal that's a larger gamut of possibilities, then I recommend offering a larger gamut of pricing options as well. Not to mention, as I previously mentioned, products. Time frame is also very important. For those of us that have been in business for more than a year or so, we know that not putting a date on a proposal is a problem. One situation that comes up, a client comes back to us. We have a proposal that we sent them years ago, and the proposal includes cotton shirts. All of us know how much cotton has increased in price in the past, 3, 4, 5 years. So that proposal may not be good, and if we did not quote them on a time frame, we might get ourselves in a bit of trouble. Also, time frames give us a sense of urgency with the sale. Clients realize, oh, okay, so this promotion is only good for the spring or only good for this month. It makes them a little bit more apt to actually make a purchase decision without wasting our time. Organization of the layout's a given. Has to be easy to read, has to read top to bottom. And unique elements is just something different. Always include something different that your client's not expecting. If we're from a very rural area where graphics aren't really the biggest deal, doing something simple, as you see on your screen, a gradient of a darker blue to a lighter blue in the background of your proposal might be enough to jazz it up, because others might not even do that. If we're in a very high competition area, a unique element might be our logo in the background with a transparency so you can see through it, but it's the size of the entire page of the proposal. Something really cool and in your face like that. Although again, might be too aggressive for some of us in some of our generation. Let's actually dive in to actually start creating this proposal now. Importing data. So many of us are used to typing and using many different skills and different tools inside of Corel. Again, I'm going to reiterate, this is more of an intermediate level class. I'm not going to go really fast. I'm not going to go snail slow either for beginners. And I will assume that the attendees of this class and those of you who are listening to this after today's date do have a basic knowledge of Corel. I am always available for specific questions. Even if I'm busy, I'll write you back. Feel free to email me, and the email is listed on screen now. I'm going to take the data on screen, select it all, and move it off to the side so that we can access the actual page. As you can see, with all of the data that I moved to the side, the page did not move because it is locked. For those of us familiar with that process, you can select any graphic, right-click. Locking the object will not allow it to move as we're selecting. This is especially handy in our situation because I will be clicking on top of our blue area, and I do not want to move the blue every single time. Starting from the top, we need to type in the actual data, bring in the actual information that needs to be listed for this proposal. Starting with the most important things, my business name. And I'll just use my business, and I'll use Wilcom, I'll use a little bit of Corel, and I'll use my business name, all three, as the presenters representing what would be your businesses. So we are Wilcom America. We are partially CorelDRAW in a joint venture with them. And my business is Plan B Marketing. So there's our logos. Bring those in at the top, very important. My company information is also very important, my contact information, my website, and my email, my phone number, etc. Notice how all of the information I'm bringing in, it's not organized yet. There's a reason why I put organization far down the list of things to include, because we just need to get it all out there. It's very, once we have all of our data, then we can organize and make it pretty. But if we skip something because we're trying to make it pretty in the beginning, and we forget to put our phone number, that proposal's obviously worth a lot less to our customers. Also, I'm going to add one particular element with the line tool in Corel, and that is the drawing tool, and that's just a break. Just a line or a break, and I'll adjust the thickness of that also. Make it quite a bit thicker here. Just to give us a break from the top, where I'll be representing my business information, to the bottom where we're actually showing the customer, the proposal, the proposed items, etc. My workspace might look a little different than some of yours out there. I prefer my Pantone color palette floating, so I'll be moving this out of the way here and there. Hopefully that doesn't bug anybody. I know some of us OCD people can get too much is going on. in a corner is always the best place to place a logo. Picture's worth 1,000 words, and that's why you're listening to this webcast right now, and you realize that picture is worth 1,000 words. But showing your name, your logo, etc., needs to be the first thing seen. We all read top to bottom, left to right, at least in this region of the country and the world. So that's where the first graphic element should certainly be posted. A few of the shortcuts that I'll be showing is centering and aligning. I'm going to select both the logos in the upper left, hit C on my keyboard for center. That is a shortcut found under Arrange, under Align and Distribute. Align left, right, top, bottom, center horizontally, vertically, etc. Separating these elements in different graphic elements later on in our presentation is going to be important as well. I'm a big fan, some of us are, some of us aren't, of separating pieces by different outlines, etc. I drew a square here. The square has no fill color, so it's just the outline element itself. I'll assign a thickness outline to that, and it now separates the logo section of our proposal to the information section a little bit more up at the top here. Now, the order in which you represent your company information is ideally up to you. Personally, I feel that websites are always last. Giving a client proposals, also giving them the opportunity to contact me. The first and very most important thing, in my opinion, is my name, my company name, my Plan B Marketing. After that, I prefer a phone call, especially with anything dealing with specifics, and if I've gone as far as making a proposal, we're talking about pricing and money at this point. Email's certainly secondary, but I think a phone number is most important. I'm even going to make that a little bit larger. I'm going to select all of these lines of text, hit L on my keyboard to align them to the left, and then actually I'm going to hit Control-Shift-A to bring up the Align and Distribute dialog on the right-hand side of our demonstration here. What that's done is in X6, this is a new feature in X6, and Align and Distribute has its own options and its own Docker, if you will, on the right. What I did this for is I'd like to align these in equal spacing vertically. Clicking the vertical spacing, you can see in X6 also lines appear in each line of text, giving us that spacing that we can see. Now, to those of us decorators, embroidery people, screen printers, etc., we also realize that just because it's perfectly aligned doesn't mean it's perfectly aligned to the eye. So I just want to throw that out there. You may still want to adjust things depending on the font, the text, etc. And that for those of us that are familiar with it, happens mostly in areas of text. For example, there's a G here. In the G in Plan B Marketing, the spacing between the bottom of the G and the top of, let's say, the M, because that's the highest point, is the same as the spacing in the top of the B here and the bottom of the text. Now, but it doesn't quite look right to the eye, so we might bump that down. Just going over a few of these concepts now while we're just putting in information, and I'll kind of skip these later assuming that you got that when we're working with the artwork. Next on our list, and I'm going to zoom in, type in separate lines. I did make myself a separate note of this. Typing in separate lines allows us to do things, as you saw there very easily, me stretching out and making my text larger in the phone number, the most important area. Also makes it a lot easier for me to change colors. I can click on a new color real quick if I need to highlight something specifically. For those of us who like to type and then hit enter and then type some more, that's all good and fine for Microsoft Word. But now that we're in design software, use separate lines. It's going to make our life easier. If you need to, just bring up that Align and Distribute options so that you can organize it and take an extra minute or so it looks good. Importing the artwork. There's many different ways that we can import artwork. For those of us that are fans of Google, copy, paste, drag and drop. The new CorelDRAW allows us to do all of the above with certain limitations to the certain website and what lockers that website is actually presented to us. But in the most part, in most cases, graphics are free on the internet. Obviously, if there's a watermark or specific, copyright situation in the graphics, we certainly cannot recommend that you use them. In which case, we recommend that you contact either a designer, you design yourself, or there's many companies out there that sell stock artwork and stock logos for those custom graphics that we'd like to add to the client's logo to make it more exciting than just the name. For example, and here I'll just bring up, I have some graphics listed here, drag and drop to import. As we're all familiar with, to a basic level of Corel, importing as curves with any graphic or text, dragging and dropping file import is also an option to bring in new artwork. So I brought in a fireman cross, if you will, that we may use later to jazz this up if we still have time at the end of the class. So literally I just dragged and dropped an EPS file, a CorelDRAW file, an AI file, a PDF, and many other formats straight into Corel. Setting your background is also very important. I've chosen a blue. This is a nice hue, a background color. Primary colors are always good to stick with for proposal reasons. Grays, and something that's not going to take away from the elements that are presented on top of it and giving you a nice contrast. As you can see, here's a spoiler, we'll be using some lighter colored garments and one promotional product. So with these lighter colors, I think a little bit darker blue is going to give us a nice contrast there. Preemptively striking and giving us room at the bottom, I'm going to Control D on that line that I drew, place it towards the bottom here, actually showing the graphic element, area at the bottom for us to show more information, giving me the center section to actually represent the graphics and the proposal, the meat of the graphics itself. Selecting, holding down Shift, selecting the other line, then selecting C on my keyboard to make sure that they are aligned to their center, or I could have done so with this alignment tool horizontally here. Quickest way to set a background. Double-clicking on your square tool actually selects the entire page. Not only selects the entire page, but does so while creating a new object in the size of the page and placing that new object always all the way in the background. So if I were to click on a new color now, you can see that you can't see it because it's behind the locked object. It always gives you that new page all the way in the background. Control Page Up on our keyboard will now show that gray colored object that I just created in one page higher. This is a shortcut also found under Arrange, under Order, front of page, back of page, forward one, back one. And these are just Control Home, Control N, Control Page Up, Control Page Down. Some of these shortcuts I'll be mentioning in future classes as well. Now, if you're the type like me that likes things to be separated by squares and boxes, then you may want to actually create two squares in the background, a blue one, and in this case I created a gray, and actually have them represented separately. Excuse me while I take a drink of water there. Having multiple layers here gives a little bit of depth and kind of classes up the graphic a little bit more. Obviously, gray on blue is not what we're looking for, so I'll grab from my palette at the bottom, drag the same blue into the gray area, and I'll use the same interactive fill tool, the bottom tool in Corel, bottom left tool, to make two layers of a similar interactive blend, but with this black outline that I've created, kind of gives it some depth. Slightly different colors, it just gives it a little bit of pop for that background. I'm going to select that background, right-click. I'm going to lock that one off also, so that as when I'm dragging and dropping objects on top of this, I'm not moving, again, our entire background at the same time. This also allows us to highlight certain areas, much like I did with the square here. We may choose to highlight another area. I'm going to duplicate our square, place it symmetrically down below our logos up at the top, giving just as much emphasis to our logos as the logo that I'll be working with now. The center of those two align, and the next step is actually arranging, and that's what I'm kind of starting at with these lines and areas that I've worked with here. So arrangement is very important. And one area that I just remembered that we did not state, this is very important, state specifically what the proposal is. This is a proposal, or this is a quote. It's different. In your business, how you define the book, it might be represented quite differently. Proposal for, you can even say the name of the school or organization. But make sure that you do state that it is a very specific quote or proposal, etc. Taking my own advice, I just duplicated that. I needed to place a date. So today is the 9th. And then representing one more line of text, I'll duplicate that again, place it below, and we will represent this as a May pricing. That works. So I mentioned a few things at the beginning of the class, but I didn't actually put it in here, I just noticed. So I will align those to left by selecting them, hitting L on the keyboard. Align their spacing by using my alignment tool. So make this a little bit smaller. Make sure it is represented eloquently or boldly with red text, and I may even select that text to be bold in itself. I'm placing this right next to this empty square here because this is where I'm going to highlight a certain aspect that's going to excite the customer. The number one thing that excites me when I look at this particular graphic is my logo in the upper corner, because that represents myself. The number one thing that's going to excite your customer is the artwork or their logo that they chose, that they're in love with already on the design. So I'm going to duplicate my logo and place it itemized within that highlighted area. I'm going to zoom in a bit here so you guys can see that. To each their own how large you may want to represent and actually highlight the graphic piece itself. If you're working with a more exciting graphic, you may want to show it larger. You may even take up a quarter of your page to reiterate this is the artwork that you guys fell in love with. Select this, Control G on my keyboard to group. As I may move this around later, it'll be easier to select later when I do so. Going back to our list, make sure that I'm keeping in order here. Preparing the artwork. There's many different ways to prepare our artwork to make sure it's ready, and I'm not going to go into too much detail with this, as we will be covering all of these in much more detail: tracing, outlining, contouring, masking, these type of topics in later CorelDRAW classes. But for right now, you all can kind of notice that in my Plan B logo here, it's not too pretty in that I have this big white square behind my logo. The big white square is represented because it is a JPEG that I brought in. It is a bitmap, if you will. And for those of us a little bit more familiar with Corel, we can see it's specifically 112 dots per inch listed at the bottom. I'm going to choose to mask this because I'm going to, depending on our output process, we may choose to auto-digitize this with our awesome Wilcom bitmap to digitize tool. Or I may print this, or I may trace later, and that I don't want to spend the time to do the entire bitmap to vector tracing while I'm just in the proposal generation process with the customer. So under bitmaps in Corel, we're going to go down to bitmap color mask, opening a new tab on the right here, as you can see in Corel. Bitmap color mask is a very simple tool in which you use your eyedropper to select a specific color and adjust the tolerance of that color that you'd like to remove before you click on apply. Clicking on apply, as you can see here, removed white from my graphic at 44%, if you want to kind of think of it that way. I'm going to increase this to 75% and click on apply this time. So it's actually increasing a little bit more, and a little bit more of white in the area selected, because that white was the color that I selected in that area. Be careful with the color mask tool. You might start removing more color than you'd like. For example, around the edge of my logo, as I zoom crazy in right now, you can see that there was some gray. And because I removed so much white, it removed much of that gray also. So I may want to Control Z, go back a couple steps so that I can get some of the elements that were lost in that particular image here. So obviously I chose a small JPEG. I could have used a higher res image, but I chose to use a lower quality for our demonstration purpose here, because that's what we usually get. All right, so now I've removed the background from my logo. It's going to be much easier for me to place this logo or this graphic element, Control D on my keyboard, on additional products. Jumping forward, back to our list to make sure I didn't miss anything. And vector tracing. I'm not going to spend the time to show vector tracing. This will be a large section in a class in the future. Layering is also part of generating proposals. Obviously a very large part of generating proposals, making sure that the graphic is represented appropriately on the product in the proper order. Very similarly to how I placed one square on top of the other, and very similarly how I placed graphics on top of my squares in the background, my blue squares in this particular art element or graphic. I use the graphic liberally, everyone, just to mean our Corel workspace. Our artwork needs to be an appropriate layer. Obviously, if I try to place my logo on top of this hoodie, the logo was brought into CorelDRAW before the hoodie, thus it's behind it. As I mentioned earlier, holding down Control, page up, page down, or Home or End on your keyboard will increase or decrease the order of whatever object is selected. All those tools can also be found in order under Arrange in Corel. So with my logo selected, Control Home brings that logo all the way to the top layer. It's literally on top of everything now because I hit Home, not just page up. So it is on the very highest layer of our graphic. Positioning this very simply onto our hoodie when we're happy. Simply finish by duplicating our graphic because we need to represent this in multiple fashions. Now, for those of us a little bit more familiar with Wilcom and those graphic tools, we may want to quickly trace or obviously drop this logo right into our awesome Wilcom software so that we can digitize it very easily. I'm not going to focus too much on I need to open a new page here anyways. I'm not going to focus too much on the embroidery elements of this class, as it's our first and this is a creative class. We're just going to show this logo here right on the hat. Now, for those of us a little bit more comfortable with sewing on hats, we may want to change the actual, not just the orientation, but the way that the graphic is represented on that hat. As you can see, I made it a little bit, not quite as tall. And giving a better representation in the proposal is going to give us more opportunity later when the client actually makes a decision and a purchase decision there. I just held down Shift, selected the hat also, so that both were selected while I moved them. Going to select our graphic, duplicate it one more time, Control D. Now it is all the way in the highest layer because I am duplicating it after I brought my logo to, well, Control Home or the order to the top layer on the graphic there. Boom. So now that I've placed my actual art, the part of the graphic the client wants to see and is so excited about on the products that I'd like to sell to the customer, we're going kind of back to arrangement a bit. I personally have found that the interesting element, or as I stated over here on the left, the unique element that I like to use is positioning. So I very often like to take the #1 product in my proposal, position it much, much larger, placing it in the background and orienting it possibly on its side. So this is just a cool way to represent a graphic. I'm going to Control G, by the way, here, everyone, so it's grouped together. And I'm going to Control End to the bottom layer, Control Page Up to move it up a couple layers so that it is behind the other graphics that we have here. Now I can select it individually, and I can show this artwork kind of in a cool way behind the other elements that we're showing the customer. I'm going to select the hat, hold down Shift, select the graphic on top of the hat, Control G on my keyboard is the shortcut to group. By the way, pretty much every single thing that I've shown you guys as far as shortcuts in today's class can be found under Arrange, either under order, a line, or just right under Arrange in its major tool set. So there's our hat options. I'm going to do the same with our graphic on the cup, coffee mug. Select both, group, and place off to the side. Symmetry has always been a very important part of professional artwork until the modern age. Some of us, like myself, who I admittedly slightly OCD, this bugs me that the graphic is slightly off-center, that the artwork is slightly off-center, but it is so very popular in every avenue of every industry that I've seen that I kind of force myself to not put things perfectly aligned. And it's more exciting. It appeals to the younger crowd. So many of us deal with athletics. The younger crowd is so important in schools. And it does make the graphic a little bit more exciting. As I mentioned, you must have some sort of unique element in your artwork for it to really stand out. So grouping, layering, very important. Highlighting the graphic is what I've done up here in the upper left. This may be something that you want to do in multiple ways. And if you're sending this proposal in an email, I recommend taking the part that they love the most. Once again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but even copying and pasting it straight into the email itself, so it's on the page of an email. This is just a recommendation from someone myself. I consider myself a professional marketer, a professional trainer, and actually I do have degrees in business advertising and marketing as well. I didn't mention that earlier, but it helps. The exciting part, always lead with your best foot forward. It's the client's name is what they're drawn to. Picture's worth 1,000 words. Again, I keep saying these things, but they just can't be iterated enough. Restate your contact information at the bottom. I don't know why, but when you send this to a company, they don't always look at the top for where your company information is. It's strange, but I don't know how many times I've sent proposals, multiple page proposals, single page proposals, built websites for customers in which they say, I can't find your phone number, or I can't find that very important information that they need to contact you, which you do not want them to be difficult to find at all. So I always put my contact information, again, I just selected my contact information, duplicated it, and place it at the bottom. Also, when you're talking about multiple pages or websites, or someone that's going to zoom in very closely to a proposal like the one we're seeing right now, you always want to make it as easy as possible. When they scroll down to the bottom, they say done, decision's made, they're ordering, give them your phone number, give them that easy way to order at the bottom. I also, here's a couple extra tips as we're getting into the 35-minute range. I also like to put a personal element at the bottom. If you have a contact in the company, if your contact is Mrs. Angie, put her name at the bottom. When she sees it, it gives her a bit of pride that she's the one that is actually moving forward with this project. It also, when Mrs. Angie forwards this to the art director, the athletic director, her boss, it also shows that person that, wow, she contacted a company that has some professional demonstration tools, has some professional proposals. Makes her look good, makes you look good. And if it's Angie's just Angie and there's nobody else in the whole company that you're doing this graphic for, people always like to see their names. So put their name at the bottom, and you may also want to place, contact at the bottom as well. They know who they are. I don't recommend putting this information right straight at the top, but I do recommend putting it at the bottom. You may even want to reiterate their contact information if a proposal is something that will be passed around your office. So if Angie calls in for the order and you're not the one that picks up the phone and your employee is the one that actually takes the order, maybe you want to put Angie's phone number in here. so that when your employee brings up your copy of the proposal, they can get back a hold of Angie as well. And this is just inter-office, organization, and we all do this slightly differently. Again, I selected 3 lines of text. I hit C on my keyboard to center, and I'm going to go to my arrangement tools, make sure those are properly aligned. This is the heart. This is the most of what a professional proposal should look like. All of the elements are here. I'm sure all of us listening, oh, I like to add one more piece of information. Yes, I'm not saying anything bad about any additional data, any other methods. I'm certainly happy to take any recommendations if anybody has some for me. But the point of this class is to show our artwork and show our graphics in a way that is going to help us get orders. And just putting together this basic proposal for our customers will certainly help with that. This section in the lower right-hand corner I typically leave for pricing. Depending on your office, depending on your proposals and quoting methods, I am a big fan of saying price quoting at a starting point. Even if I quoted the client, $22.95 for a hoodie, I like to put hoodies start at, and then I may actually put their $22.95 price point there. I may put a little bit less, and if they ask, I can always say, oh, for children. Getting the client to ask you a question is always a good thing, always a good thing. If you quoted the client at $25.95 and your pricing says hoodies start at $22.95, and that gets them to call you one extra time, don't see it as a waste of time. See it as someone that has already made a purchase decision. They're calling you about the numbers. They've already decided they're going to spend the money. They want to know how they can save $3 or $2 or whatever the case is. It's a good thing. But again, in our office, local area, you may choose to only quote specifically what you quote. This is just, again, a sales method that I use to help. Pricing starts at a certain point. I may quote that low, I may quote that high, depending on the situation. If the graphics on the shirt were extremely complicated, and if the proposal that I'm generating for the client is, let's say, multi-decoration, print plus embroidery plus, I don't know, rhinestones or something, this price quote will be much different. As I'm a modular person or an elemental person, hey, welcome elements. Hey, I made a pun. Anyways, I would probably put this price quote in a similar square as represented elsewhere in the graphic, and put multiple lines obviously here for all the products listed. I do not recommend placing a product without stating what that product is priced at. In that point, I see that as a waste of time. If a client sees, oh, I didn't say what the mugs start at, well, we already got a mug guy. It's too easy for them to immediately say never mind, if you will, for the product that you're represented. If you don't actually place a number on it, you may be higher priced than their mug guy, let's say, for example. Or you may be lower priced. If you're lower priced, hey, how much for 2 dozen mugs with our hoodies? If you're higher priced, well, what kind of other mugs can you get? The pricing doesn't necessarily matter as much as the posting of it and to getting your customer to be appealed by it and to be interested in it. So in this case, we'll obviously say metal mugs start at, we'll go for 95. In later classes, I'll also be going into more detail with consistency in pricing and consistency with artwork and layouts, that type of thing. We are towards the end of the class now. I did promise everyone this wouldn't be a long one, and for those of you who are watching the recorded one, I'm just wrapping up now. I'd like to finish up by thanking everyone for attending the class. My name is Clay again. I've been in this industry for a very long time. I've been selling Wilcom software for 3.5 years now. I want to reiterate again, one last time, how open I am to questions, comments, concerns, anything that you guys want to email me. Give me a quick call if it's something that's really bugging you. Hey, I've always had a problem with blank. If I don't answer the phone, I'll call you back, and if I do answer the phone, you have my full attention. My entire business is revolves around the concept of personalized service, one-on-one service. I keep our overhead low so that we can actually provide those services to customers. Again, if there's any questions, feel free to call. I'd like to thank everybody for their time. Hope you enjoyed the class, and hope you have many new sales opportunities with your new proposal generation skills. Thanks again. Talk to you all later.
Hello, Clay.